simply a Redbird fan, join the Redbird Club and be committed to excellence. Become a member and meet the challenge today.
The Redbirds took on the Drake Bulldogs at Horton Fieldhouse in the first of 2 games in a row in the Missouri Valley Conference at home. The result was a 12-point win, but it wasn't all that easy. It was one of those back-and-forth kind of games. We'll look at the first momentum swing on the part of the Redbirds and then come back and talk to Coach about the rest of the game. But first of all, let's look at the first half highlights now.
Coleman's second free throw shot doesn't go. Rebound, Chaphorn after Peterson knocked it out. 18:40 to go. Inside Coleman. Now Blair. Jumper. Good. Now to Blair. Coleman. Turnaround jumper. Good. Now to Pemberton. His turnaround jumper. Good. Jackson to Chaphorn. Now to Pemberton. On Rourke. Goes to Jackson. Fakes the shot. In the lane. Jumper. Good. Redbirds can pull within 2. Chaphorn on the drive. Shoots, scores! Chaphorn. Guarding him was James. 3-point range by Harris is good. Inside Roberts. He shoots and gets the bucket.
Well, that's pretty much how the first half went. Drake took a big lead. You came back strong against them. And then all of a sudden in the second half, Drake came out. When I watched the second half, the beginning of the second half, I never saw 5 guys stand around as much as I did the first part of that half. Difficult to explain why.
Well, that isn't the first time that particular thing has happened, Al. And what concerns me is the fact that we aren't able to sustain our effort quite as long as what we should. It is difficult to explain. We missed a couple of shots that we could have very easily gone in. But we were, as the coaches say, a step behind everything. They were much more assertive and quicker than what we were, and it expressed itself both offensively and defensively. And they run off the first 13 points. Then we score. But then they run off a couple of more buckets, and all of a sudden we find ourselves 5 down before we kind of get things back going in our direction. But also, I think that if you look at the Drake team, it's a collection of very good athletes, except the postman where Frederick is, and he's a big, strong man inside. So you've got a lot of quickness out on that floor and very good basketball players. So if you put teams that are fairly even, there's going to be spurts. I remember John Wooden always saying that he felt his team scored in spurts, and I'm not trying to compare us to UCLA, but I think if the epitome of college basketball is going to score in spurts, then your teams aren't going to do much better.
It was 46-41, and you called a timeout. I thought from that point on, we were back in the swing of things. Even though Drake at times performed well, I still thought we were doing what we needed to do to win the game from that point on.
I would tend to agree with you, and I don't think it was anything particular that I said. I think they recognized that they weren't playing very well. We started to change and make some substitutions. Matt wasn't feeling well to start the second half off. Got him out, let him sit for a while, and he's kind of settled down and then got back in the groove. And then I took Cliff out early in the second half, and then when we started to make our stretch drive, I put Cliff and Tony back in the ball game. So now you've got 3 seniors now who are starting to play well, and as a result of that, we get to a point where we're much more productive.
You got a lot of mileage out of several individuals who you seem to rotate in quite a bit. You got a lot of mileage, I thought, of Sonny, John, and Tony, even though Tony's usually a starter and he performs fairly well. With the bad knee, I was a little uncertain as to how well he could do, and I thought he did perform well.
I thought Tony did play fairly well, and I took him out quite often, not because I necessarily felt he was fatigued, but I didn't want him to get to a point where he was fatigued. He had only practiced one day, and that was the day before. I thought it was more important to keep him fresh and keep his legs underneath him as much as possible, and by that I mean where he felt strong. And he readily admitted the day before that he got winded very, very quickly, and that brace that he's in is somewhat cumbersome. We have another one ordered that will be somewhat lighter, but it isn't here yet.
From the physical standpoint, we'll address this later, as a matter of fact. It's kind of the question of the day, so we'll just talk briefly about it now. You mentioned Matt's not feeling well. Overall, though, the team seems to be starting to recuperate from some of those injuries.
Well, I don't think we're seeing the same Cliff Peterson that we saw prior to the injury, although I think the injury is probably about 99% healed. Anytime you tear a ligament, I think it takes somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks to fully heal. I think Randy's to a point now where he's probably playing about as well as he has prior to his injury. Tony, we aren't going to see that. I don't think we'll ever quite see the same Tony Hollifield. We're just hopeful he'll be productive enough that he can make a very good contribution.
Very quickly, let's talk again about this Drake team. This is the first time you faced them this year, but they still, although their personnel, they're very talented and have some good athletes, I would compare them similar in style to Illinois State. They still play a good brand of basketball.
Oh, without question. They're a little quicker than we are, and I actually think they have more perimeter shooters. And of course, Frederick down inside, who just fell down, it must have been a wet spot on the floor, is a very good inside post player. And it's a team, offensively and defensively, that we play a lot alike. You're absolutely right, and it's going to get into those games where you think of all the Drake ISU games in the 6 years or 7 years that we've been in the league, and most of them have been very close. By the way, that was an excellent call by the official. Gary was really screened out, and I know he was a little unhappy at the time, but it was an excellent call. I couldn't tell who, after reviewing the films, I couldn't tell who hit it last.
Right, I saw it again, too, several times in what we're looking at here, and a good call is a no call in that situation because it looked like they both hit it. At any rate, it was a 12-point win, and the following game against Creighton
We'll take it.
Monday night. Yes, we'll take it. Was on Monday night. We'll look at highlights of that later on in the show, but first, we'll take a break and then come back with our player profile for the day.
Well, I think the main thing is that I've basically moved from a more inside-oriented player to an outside-oriented player. Well, in high school, I played center in a little forward position. And when I got here, you know, being the size that I were and the lack of size that we had on our high school basketball team, I had to move out to the guard spot. So I had to work on my ball handling and my outside defensive pressure. So it basically changed my thought, you know, of what I had to do on the floor. Yeah, that's one of the things besides my ball handling and maybe even my outside shot that I figured that I had to work on, because in high school I played defense on bigger guys all year long, basically on the inside. You know, I was pretty good at it, but I never really had to go out on the floor and challenge anybody. So I figured I had to work on that, you know, in my transition to the college level. Well, what really happened was, you know, I kind of got on the high side, and I might have looked away a little bit to see if was anybody coming to set a screen on the ball, and then that's when he got a step on me and just went around me. And you know, in those kind of situations, once somebody got a step on you, the best thing to do is just call for help and just try not to let foul, make a stupid foul, and have possibly three-point play. But those situations, it kind of bothers you, because you have to be ready. And plus your feet, the feet is the biggest part, playing defense pressure out on the floor. And you have to constantly move your feet. And sometimes you get caught up in your position or your man and not thinking about that you have to move your feet when he moves. And, that's how he got the step on me, yeah. Well, my first impression of the program was that Bob Donewald was a very good coach and that discipline was a big part of his program. And I was figured that since, in high school, the high school coaches tried to discipline you, but because of the lack of talent that they may have and your role on the team, that you might not be able to get as big a discipline as what you would really need for, your future plans and, in life. So I figured in making my decision and coming here that if I was going to have any perceptive of what it was really going to be like in life, that Bob Donewald and Illinois State University probably would be the best place for me to go to receive that perception. Well, he was a very good coach. He tried to let us, get a feel of what the game of basketball was all about. And at the same time, let us have a little freedom to do, what we was capable of doing. And he, I was sort of like the star my senior year, but still, he always pounded on me that I could, I could be better. I could be as good as I want to be if I try. And so, my senior year was really a rough year for me because I had him, constantly pounding on me to work, the hardest that I can all the time because, we needed that for the team to be any success at all. I had to be like that. And plus, I kind of got a feel on, I kind of grew as a person, knowing that, if I work as hard as I can, that, I could achieve some of the finer things in life. Yeah. Well, at first, I was kind of a little hesitant because I didn't think, I'll be able to make it as smoothly as I has. But, as of now, I think it's coming along real good. I'm kind of happy with where I am right now. And my ball handling, it's basically not even a problem for me anymore. It's just sometimes I just lose my concentration at times. But as far as being able to physically handle the ball, I think I, made a big jump. Well, I think this team is a very good team as far as the chemistry that it has and the blend. I mean, people on the team know their roles, and we try to work, at improving them on a day-to-day basis. And I think with the 4 seniors that we have being the designated leaders, it sort of helps the underclassmen, including myself, get a perspective of what team leadership and team organization is as far as being successful. And I think that's a big part, of our team goals.
Okay, on the principle of verticality, they're really emphasizing that this year because it appears that in the past, the defensive man has really been put at a disadvantage, even though he's played good defense, just because he was leaving his feet, and going straight up anywhere from the ceiling to the floor is his area. I mean, he's entitled to that spot. And as he goes up, as long as he keeps his hands straight up, and that man, the offensive man, comes to him and maybe goes through his arms, you've either got no call at all, or you could have an offensive foul, player control foul at that point. But what happens a lot of times, and I think if you look real close at a replay, is that big man always wants to try and make that block. And if he moves his hands just a little, that's enough for the officials to see that. And then if there's contact made, it's on the part of the defensive man. I recall, I believe it was last week, Jeff Harris was called for an offensive foul as far as, maybe it was up at Loyola, I'm not sure. But he tries to go into that defensive man and draw that foul. And what's happening is now the officials are being emphasized to watch that principle of verticality. And if that defensive man's going straight up, the offensive man comes in and initiates the contact, then you've got the offensive foul.
Redbirds went from Drake to Creighton, both at Horton Fieldhouse. Now you took on
It isn't a
Creighton.
long drive. It's only about 2.5 hours if you drive it.
But if you stay put, you don't have to drive anyway.
Yeah, that's even better.
You took on Creighton on Monday night. Now you beat Creighton up in Omaha, and at that time they had a 7-game winning streak. But I can remember like New Mexico State beating them on the road and then losing to them at home. And so it's always a team that you really got to watch out for.
A lot of people have asked me to compare this team out, this Creighton team, with some of the other Creighton teams when Benjamin was there, and I think it's a better basketball team, and I'll tell you why. Number one, Gallagher is not the athlete that Benoit Benjamin was, but he plays harder for longer periods of time, and I think gives you a better yeoman's kind of effort. And he's a very good offensive scorer in the post area, a big, strong kid that I think is just a very serious candidate for Rookie of the Year honors in the league. Mason is one of the premier guards in our league. and we're talking about that verticality rule. He really exploits that, but somehow the officials, I got to get the officials to study the tape today or study our TV show so they'll have a better understanding of the principle of verticality, because he does exploit you there very, very well. One of the best three-point shooters in our league, and in addition to that, he can drive the ball and has excellent quickness.
Well, that game was broadcast here on Telecable of Bloomington Normal. Let's go to the highlights of the ISU Creighton game from Monday night.
Creighton in a zone. Looks like a 1-3-1. Tap point, jumper, good. That's a three-pointer. Jackson hounding him. Bounce inside to Harstead. He throws it to Randy Blair. Redbirds on the run. Blair lost it away, but Peterson picks it up and scores. Peterson. Tap point, three-pointer, good. Jackson to Blair. Now to Harris. He was tempted to shoot. Tap point from three-point range again. Shot inside, doesn't go, and Harris with his second rebound. Harris, long jumper, good. Harris on the fly. Lays it up and scores. Blair. Harris. Jumper, good. I'll tell you, Jeff is feeling good. You can see him in the rhythm. You can see him being pretty sharp. Gives it to Jackson. His jump shot does not go. Tipped up and scores. Peterson gets the Birds the lead. Looking for Harris, but instead goes tap point. Three-point jumper, good! And that three-pointer gives the Redbirds a 39-35 lead. Jeff Harris with the steal. I'd say the Redbirds have a little more purpose to them right now. Peterson. Just a little more spirit to them. Now Harris, he's from three-point range. Good! Inside is Hollifield. Now skip pass. Jeff Harris, three-pointer again.
Our question for today comes from Catherine Lane, who is from Normal, Illinois again. She really asked two questions, but we'll narrow it down to one because we're short on time. She says, because of unbelievable circumstances with this Redbird team, she's referring to the injuries and illnesses, how is the morale among the players, and how do you deal with the issue of morale?
Well, I think the morale has been good. I think kids really have responded well to the adversity they've been under. But I think they respond to me, and as long as they sense that that I'm pushing and that I set the tone for the direction that we need to go, then I think they respond appropriately. If I were down or despondent or whatever, then I think we'd have a reaction to that. And as long as they sense that I recognize that, well, our chances aren't as good relative to winning, but hey, that's neither here nor there. We have a responsibility to keep pushing and keep driving. And as long as kids understand that's where you're coming from, they usually follow you pretty well.
Very briefly, the perception among some people is that since you push the injuries behind you, that you don't really care about that player that's no longer playing. But that really isn't the case. You really do simply have to go on.
Absolutely. In the field of business, if somebody isn't ready to perform, you can't shut down the whole plan, or you can't call off the operation. You've got to get somebody who can perform and go on while you put people around that individual, support people to help mend him. And, of course, that's where our athletic training staff comes in and getting a youngster ready to play. But you concentrate on the job that you've got to do while you allow that youngster to mend.
Okay. Thanks to Catherine Lane. Catherine, you've won your Converse bag for this week. If you would like to ask Coach a question, feel free to drop us a line to the Bob Donewald Show, care of Telecable Bloomington Normal, 1201 West Division, Normal, Illinois, 61761. If you do write us and we use your question on the air, we'll send you one of these Converse bags free as a gift for writing your excellent questions. So feel free to drop us a line.
Are you the one that picks the question?
I do pick the questions.
Oh, okay.
And they have been good ones, though.
Yes, they have been.
Okay.
Very good. That was an excellent question.
That was. Thank you again, Catherine. We'll see you again next week, same time.